The National Investor's motto is, you can get information anywhere, but here you get knowledge. And for well over 40 years now, Chris Temple has imparted that knowledge, an unparalleled, understandable, and useful take on the big picture of the markets and of our world. He has been out in front of what you see on the news every day on many themes. More, Chris has taken this macro knowledge and his unique analytical abilities to uncover unique investment opportunities. Often, he has guided his members to big winners in resources, biotech stocks, and more. His talents and connections often getting him into ground floor opportunities before they are discovered. Without further ado, here is Chris with today's topic.
Welcome back, everybody. In just a few minutes, I'm going to be joined by Joe Basile. He is the CEO of JFB Construction Holdings. They are listed on the NASDAQ under the symbol JFB. They're one of my newer stories and a fairly new public company. They listed back in the beginning of March, and notably, since that time, their share price is up about 40% as we're recording this right before the long Labor Day weekend, while the major or one of the major ETFs that focuses on home construction is down by about 30% or so from its most recent 52-week high. And of course, the reason for that, as you know, a lot of us know, is that mortgage interest rates have not come down for any length of time. They go right back up after they do. They're running back up again near their highs for this cycle. The 30-year mortgage is a bit over 7% again. Just this morning, and I'm saying Friday morning, just before the Memorial Day weekend, the news is out that home builder sentiment nationally is its lowest in 3 years. But I'll tell you where home builder sentiment is not low at all, but is quite positive and kind of off the charts lately, is with JFB. And you're going to find out why that is today. Before we get into the nuts and bolts, of course, the usual preliminaries. First of all, Joe and or myself may be making forward-looking statements, talking about the future and so forth. And, you know, none of us has a crystal ball or a tricked-out DeLorean, so we can't guarantee what's going to happen down the road. So be mindful that what we discuss may or may not come about in the way that we think it's going to come about. Do your own due diligence, which I really encourage you to do with a story like this. And beyond that, the National Investor Publishing, we added JFB Construction Holdings fairly recently to my recommended list. Shortly, we will be compensated for doing some of the media and copywriting work that the company is doing, of which this video will be a part. So yes, even though JFB was told of to my members based on the company's merits, and you're going to learn about those merits, we also are compensated to put this information out there for a wider audience. JFB, as those of you already know who are familiar with the company, even though it's done projects in its lifetime in something like 36 or so states, the main focus is in Florida, the Southeast U.S., and so forth, where a disproportionate amount of the population has been moving in recent years. There's building booms going on everywhere, and this is kind of the catbird seat for JFB, and they put out a lot of news recently, which we'll go over a bit, etc. on that. And this is important to understand because even if you go back to when real estate and housing just collapsed, in some places worse than others, back after the bubbles burst in 2007, 8, and 9, that time frame. And it took a few years for real estate to really get back on its feet nationally. Even that kind of a beating in the overall sector, you know, there's some people weren't affected. And again, it depended on the part of the country you were in, the clientele you served and whatnot. And I tell the story regularly as an example of this, that a buddy of mine I used to play hockey with in the years that we lived out in Montana back in the 90s, and I've kept in touch with him sporadically over the years since. He told me that after everything fell apart in 2007 and 8, he didn't skip a beat because this guy literally owns his own house on the border of Glacier National Park out in Montana. And a lot of his clients are building and or rehabbing nice old houses or building nice new ones or rehabbing ski type chalets in that area and so forth. And while everybody else was bleeding in that environment, he didn't miss a beat. He had clients who said, okay, here's my blueprints from our architect, or if you here's what we want, and I want you to draw them up and tell us when it's done and tell us what to write the check for. Period. And so that went on for him during that whole time because it was a hot area of the country, like other parts of, Colorado and the upper, North Pacific Northwest and some other places. And of course, these days, the big one being here in Florida specifically and in the Southeast states generally, where there's just been a tremendous movement of the population and so forth. And JFB is serving that. They went public, as I said, back in March. They've been doing very well. They just came out with their first quarter numbers, which were phenomenal year over year, up 93% on the top line revenue from the first quarter of 2024. And you're going to hear a lot of the reasons why Joe and I both think that this really good and encouraging inaugural quarter as a public company is only the beginning of a lot of really good quarters to come. And here is Joe Basile III, who is the CEO of JFB Construction Holdings. Joe, I'm glad you could join me to go over your recent earnings and everything else.
Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. I said at the outset that one of the things of many that I loved about your story when I first started to learn it is the culture that you have at JFB. You started as a family-run organization. When you and I spent some time together a week or so ago, you explained a lot of the origin of JFB to me, shared several anecdotes, of course, of your dad starting the company and you working at his side for a lot of years. Give us a quick overview of that. I think it's a cool story for people to get their head around.
So as a kid, I remember, as far as I can remember, being on job sites, picking up garbage, cleaning up after subcontractors, and watching my father walk stilts doing drywall work. I've seen him lay block, carpentry, hands-on, and that's always been the thing is getting in there whenever needed and being able to help perform and work along the guys. So as a kid, I grew up, knowing that hard work was something that this industry was going to require from you. And as I grew up and my father started doing more developing, he would have me working with all the subcontractors in every trade, learning from one end to the other, knowing how the building goes up, where it starts, all the different trades that was required in order for a building to come to completion, and learned it the hard way. I learned it with a broom. I learned it with a shovel. And, and he said, if you don't like, using a shovel, then I'd suggest you get a good education. So, once I graduated college, he pushed me in the direction of getting a contractor's license. And then we started partnering on land deals and doing developments, whether it be mixed use, retail, or single family housing or multifamily, and everything in between. We did a lot of good projects up until the market crash. And then we were able to sustain through that. Coming out of it, we realized that, Florida was one of the last to recover, first to feel the effects of it. And to be restricted into one area of South Florida, we knew that wasn't going to be successful. So we started doing projects outside of the state. So our first one was in Norwalk, Connecticut. And from that point, we grew tremendously into obviously now over 36 states. And we built for a lot of national franchises because of our reputation of getting things done, getting it done on time, and being able to bring the experience in high quality residential construction into commercial, which is very unheard of. So we
It's
bring that
very
value.
unheard of, yeah, in a lot of industries, and I love what you said, Joe, because in so many industries and in our society today, everything is impersonal. It's rushed. Shoddy work is done. I could tell you stories. You probably know of some of them. I think we talked about one or two things. Even in my area in St. Augustine and St. Johns County, I've seen stuff slapped up in a really poor way, just for the sake of building things. But you guys are different. It's one of the reasons why you've already got a great reputation before you went public, why you were doing a lot better in the market than pretty much all of your peers that I've seen anyway. But you shared, and I want to focus on this because again, behind any, when you look at a stock, folks, if you're thinking about rounding out your portfolio with a good building company, a construction company, whatever, the stock represents a company, and a company is people. And that's always so important to understand. I want you to share, Joe, the story that you told me when we were driving. I think it was from your office up to the site in Stewart, where you're starting the development up there, about the time that you knew you were going to lose money, but you knew you had to finish a project, and what that did not only to solidify your reputation, but all the business that came because of that. I love that story.
Yeah, so my father from as a kid has always told me that your word is worth more than your signature. And what that means is that if you tell somebody you're going to do something, you got to do everything it takes to get that done, and make sure that whatever you tell somebody, that you stand behind it. And that kind of leads to the first job in Norwalk, Connecticut, coming right out of the crash. It was the first project we had done out of state. We went up to Norwalk, the franchisee, which was an international franchise. At the end of the project, he knew that we had lost about $3,000 on the job, which was about maybe 2%. When you're making only 10%, that hurts. We did lose actually $3,000 on that job for whatever reason. We didn't anticipate some of the overhead costs for traveling. So we lost the money, but nevertheless, the project got done. The owner came to me knowing that we had lost money, and he obviously had tracked the job costs. And when he came to me and said, "Hey, we know that you lost money, but I got to tell you, I appreciate you getting it done and standing behind your word that you would get it done." And I said, "Listen, I would never leave you guys in a situation where this job is not done. My word is definitely worth more than that." And he said, "Listen, I know it is, and I'm going to recommend you to people, and I'm going to help you grow this if you want to into all kinds of states and all kinds of new customers." And at first I was a little reserved, saying, because I've heard that before, the dangling the carrot to get what you need, but honestly, the man did exactly that. Within a week, I had phone calls from 3 different states, and I was getting hired and signing contracts, and that's how it started. And I just maintained that relationship, and that saying of keeping your word, worth more than your signature. Just because you sign a contract doesn't mean you're going to do what it says, and that's where legal gets involved. And to be honest with you, we've never had a problem with legal in 15 years, other than not getting paid for jobs because people choose not to pay their bill.
Right.
It wasn't on our behalf of not finishing a job ever. And have we lost work or lost money on other jobs? Yes, but that's our fault, so we take it, we learn from it, and we continue, but we never burn bridges and we never destroy relationships. Those last forever.
And that stands out again, as I said, in the
Yep.
way society is today, regrettably, where people don't
Yep.
do that anymore. That really does stand out. And it's appropriate. And I showed it a few moments ago while you were visiting. It's appropriate that you've got that photo of your dad right off of the elevator in your
Yep.
office discussing why your handshake is more important than your signature, and you build
That's
that
right.
reputation and you keep it. So, all that and all the other advantages you have, you guys decided to go public. You went public at the beginning of March. That has given you a lot of advantages as far as being able to get better terms when you get bonded and things like that. What all went into that? I mean, we're going to get toward the end, Joe, of our discussion into your long-term growth plan and looking for accretive acquisitions and other things along the way. But give us just a quick Cliff Notes view of why you decided now is the time to go public and monetize better and take better advantage of your culture and your growth opportunities.
Yeah, so we decided to do this 3 years ago. One of a very close friend of mine that I've known for a long time came to me, takes companies public, and said, "Hey, have you thought about taking a company public?" I said, "Honestly, I have. I've never thought of it. Didn't think it was something that was viable." He says, "Well, if you want to do more developing, it's a way easier way to do. It's a much easier way to raise capital." And looking at it, where the direction we thought we wanted to go was more towards bigger public projects, and thinking about it that the financials and the sustainability of the company, being able to be bondable is not an easy thing to do. I spent probably 5 years at some point, after the market crash, that targeting for a bondability and getting limits, and it was very difficult. Insurance companies didn't want to write it after that. A lot of companies didn't make it through that time period, and a lot of projects didn't get completed. So a lot of bonding companies and insurance companies had to write out, big checks that didn't work so well for them. So they were very hesitant, if you were not a sustainable company, to do that. So, once we started down that process, it was about 2.5 years of, audits and financials and, a microscope from the SEC and all the consultants, which, is part of the process. And a lot of people say that if you can make it through it, there's always good things on the other side of the rainbow. You just got to kind of keep pushing through. And my whole life's been like that. It's been, you find an obstacle, find a way around it, find a way over it, under it. It doesn't matter. You just got to get to the other side.
I love one of the things you told me too when we were together, Joe, about one of the hiccup along the way is that you were asked what was missing from some of your filings because the regulators were saying, where's all of your debt listed? How come you don't have any of this? I love that because you guys don't have debt, you don't want it, you don't take it on.
No.
I mean, other than your short-term payables or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, it's never been about, for me as owner of the company before we became public, it's never been about how much money can I take from the company. It's how much money can I utilize to grow the company. So I've always pushed it back in a company, and I don't like debt. And a lot of people have probably learned the same lesson coming through the market crash that, when you have debt and rates fly and, and there's no way to pay that bill, it makes it very difficult. And, if you've ever if you've ever been backed up into that corner, it's not a comfortable feeling. It's not something you like. So every morning I get up, I feel like I'm fighting out of that corner, regardless of how far away from that corner I am. And one of those key things that keeps you out of there is debt. And there's good debt out there. There's debt that you take for, things that are sustainable, tenant or commercial properties or rental properties that have good debt that can service the debt, no matter if the market goes up or down. But then there's leverage percentages. We keep our leverage very low because, as rates can go from 2.5% up to 8%.
Right.
And if you're at 2.5% and you didn't anticipate the 8%, you're going to have a problem. So, and just going back to what you're saying, debt is not something that I like, but I know that there's good debt. And if we have any, it's going to be good debt. It's not going to be bad debt. We're not going to go up on credit cards and live to the extent that we have to live that way, or put the company under strain or noose around it to get where we need to be.
Yeah.
We want to be low leverage, smart debt, and we want to go out there and grow the company.
That's great. And you've announced a whack of those type of news announcements recently.
Yeah.
I mean, even though you've done over time work in 36 different states because of your reputation, the opportunities you've had, you're still chiefly focused on Florida, the Southeast U.S., what we call sometimes the Sun Belt states. And it's, as I said before you came on, it's because that's where the population is moving. It's where the economic fundamentals are better than the national average. But you guys have announced several different projects recently. Your biggest, I think, residential one ever is the one that I visited with you up in Stewart, where you're just clearing it. Now you're going to be constructing that. Tell us about that project. I thought it was pretty cool how you first acquired the land and what you had to go through to, get the locals and the town fathers on board with what is really a pretty thing that's going to be surrounded three sides by woods, have a kind of a nature kind of buffer behind it. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Preserve at Port Salerno is a 79-unit townhouse project. We're going to build it as a fee simple townhomes, but we'll rent and own all the units. And there's strategic ways we do and reasons that we do that. But that townhouse project, we bought the land back in 21. We started the site plan approval process. We were just coming back out of COVID. A lot of the city departments were closed. They were limited staff. So we got delayed quite a bit. It took us almost 3 years, give or take, to get that approved. Once we were in front of the commission, Martin County has never been a pro-development commission, which has always been a challenge. And that's why you'll see that Martin County has not grown not even a percentage of what St. Lucie County, which is obviously Port St. Lucie, that's one of the fastest growing cities in the country, is just to the north of us. But Martin County is very old. It's very old Florida. They have that mentality, and they do not like a lot of developing. So we spent 3 years going through the process of getting that site plan approved. But when we got in front of the commission, it was a 5-0 vote for the project because we had originally zoned for 88 townhouses. And we only were putting in 79. So we were under the amount that we could do, which most developers squeeze every, unit that they possibly can on the property. But they also don't take into consideration that you have a flow, a community where people live in. It has to make sense. It has to feel good. Otherwise, you're not going to have people that want to live there. And it's like I said, it's not always about the dollar. I mean, obviously, that's why we do this. But it's also about function. It's about what you're providing people to live in and call their home. And that's important to us too. We want to be able to create, a project that people can say, this is a great project. It flows really nice. It's got great parking. It's got amenities. It has a preserve area that's been designated, which we could have partially removed to put in the other units that were missing. But it wasn't going to feel right when you pull in. It was going to obstruct the flow of the traffic. And it was going to look kind of units that were just on top of each other, no space, nothing, and that's what we're trying not to create. So the numbers work. It's going to be a great project, and we're happy that we finally got it started.
Well, and it's important too, because that I think over time is going to burnish your reputation as a good, solid, values-oriented builder. And I shared with you when we were talking about this down in your office that up here in St. Augustine and St. Johns County, they are slapping stuff up at such a rate that there is some major pushback up here now. People
Right.
want, we want the increased population. We want the broader tax base so that we don't need an income tax in Florida, so that a lot of the local taxes and expenses are less than the other states. But it's got to be done responsibly, and you
Yep.
guys are, and that's a feather in your cap. Besides that announcement recently, you announced a big project up in Charlotte I thought was pretty cool to build this facility for people that store and show off antique cars. That's a growing industry, so you guys got that job in Charlotte. You're doing a couple of more builds of courtyards by Marriott,
Yep.
where I just stayed when I was up in New York. You don't want to be in Manhattan building stuff, but
Right. Right.
that's where I stayed.
We've
Um,
been there.
yeah, and all of that stuff though is indicative of why you guys a few days ago posted your Q1 financials, your first quarterly posting as a public company, and had a hell of a nice headline that you were able to grow revenue 93% year over year. You had a small bottom line profit. A lot of expenses have gone into going public and everything that's gone along with that, marketing and whatnot, but you still got a profit out of that. And I think going forward, it seems like the sky's the limit.
Yep. Yeah, we definitely align ourselves with exactly what you just said. We're now being as a public company. We've incurred a lot of expenses putting together a marketing team, things that we did not have in the past, but things that we knew that eventually we were going to have. Consultants, whether it be legal or financial, those all have to be, engaged with in order to be a public company. So we've gotten some expense, but in the same time, it's given me the opportunity to do what I think is best for the company, and that is to grow and take the time to do that and meet with the people needed, align ourselves with the right developers. That yes, we know that something that where we're making over 20% profit margins prior to going public, we know that was going to be squeezed a little bit, but we knew that we'll get through the first year or so, and we'll figure out all the ins and outs. And when we come out of this, it's going to be that's going to be like a rocket ship with the boosters lit. So, and
I
I
think
think that's
so.
where we're at.
Well, and this week's news was a hell of a nice start to that first
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
It's a real nice start. Of all the different advantages that you guys have, you've done a great job with the way you contract workers, your expenses, all these different kind of things, able to do better than most of your peers in bidding jobs, etc. And that those are all advantages. And I'm going to be talking a little bit more in depth about that and some printed material, folks, as I alluded to before Joe came on. So make sure you're on my mailing list to get that when it's available here in the very near future. But another part of your long-term growth plan that I really like is the opportunities that you see, and we discussed this as well, of smaller construction companies, ones that aren't public, maybe they're also family oriented, like JFB started out. And you got the old guy's going to retire, doesn't have anybody that wants to take the company over, but he's got some goodwill. He's got a book of business. He's got good relationships in the area he's in. So tell us about your strategy to selectively find concerns like this that you can bring into the JFB fold, how that'll work to be accretive, how you take care of the people you're buying out, et cetera. Because I love that angle.
So what I've noticed is this generation is a little different than the ones in the past. This generation is less likely to take a family business or to get involved. Obviously, internet has changed a lot of things in this world. Good, some bad. But these people that have had businesses and have developed relationships for decades, there's no one to hand it over to. For me, it was almost known that, when I get out of school, I'm going to the same thing that my dad did. And my older son is with the company. I have still a lot of family that works in the company and will retire with the company, and they have their kids that ultimately are getting involved in the young early 20s. So, we believe that there's a lot of opportunity, and we've identified quite a few um, you know, possibilities that we can acquire, merge with that are these decades of relationships that are going to get terminated once the founders retire. And we want to go in there and maintain those relationships and keep that legacy going, similar to what I've done with mine and my father. So that's a lot of opportunities out there, and a lot of companies that are going to just lose everything that they've built for many decades, and we're in there to stand there and kind of glue that back together to say, hey, we're going to maintain those relationships for you. You can be as involved as you want to be, to keep that thing going and give you a purpose to continue your life, legacy. And we're going to help maintain that, and hopefully acquire and merge with a lot of companies that have that same circumstance.
That's great that you've got that opportunity, and more so, not just the opportunity for JFB Construction, but the opportunity for the people that you'll be bringing into the fold, the people who will be served by what you're doing. Because bottom line is that for all of the other angst that we have and worries about debt and deficits and tariffs and the future and all different kind of things, the one thing that we know is still a yawning need, as it always is, and it's more acute these days, is we have a need for housing.
Yep.
And especially in these states like Florida, where you and I call home, and others near us, the population's moving here. They got to have a place to live. They've got to have the stores, the restaurants, the service companies, everything else that goes with that. You build your fair share of those as well.
Yep.
From Planet Fitness to dollar stores to all different kind of things that you've done and are
Yep.
still doing. So it's a great story. And folks, like I said before Joe came on, make sure that you get in touch with JFB Construction Holdings, get on their mailing list, follow them on social media, etc. This is one of the more solid stories I've been privileged to bring people in any sector, let alone in one that is so needed like this, no matter what you think about the economy. And Joe, I know one last thing. You and I talked about this in person. We talked about it before you came on today. But basically, as far as on a scale of 1 to 10, how much you're worried about any tariff issues and costs related to that affecting you on a scale of 1 to 10, you're about where?
Oh, 0.
Zero. That's what I thought.
Yeah, honestly, we haven't seen any effects from that, and we've been through these cycles before, and different administrations, and honestly, it's all temporary, and sometimes you got to go through a little bit of pain to get to the good, but that's just part of the process, but as of now, that has not affected us at all.
That's good. And in any case, even if lumber costs went up or steel,
Yeah.
copper, or whatever, didn't
Yep.
go up just for you,
Right,
for
right.
everybody.
Everybody.
And
Yep.
that doesn't change your other competitive advantages whatsoever. So,
Yep.
hey, great job, buddy, with what you're doing. I'm looking forward to following this story ever more closely as the months and years go by, and be down there again shortly. When I was there and we went up to Stewart, you were just clearing the ground, and it was kind of cool to see all the equipment there already. But I'll be down there in another week or two again, and I'm sure it's going to be looking a little bit different yet. And again, it's really neat what you're going to be doing for the local community and for that specific neighborhood in redoing the whole entryway off of Route 1 and everything else. And so you guys do a first class job, and it comes through. And that's why you've got the reputation you do in the industry. And again, a great story. So congratulations on all you've done. And
Thank you.
I'll look forward to catching up again soon.
Yeah, me as well.
For much more of the National Investor's cutting-edge content and actionable investment opportunities, make sure to subscribe to Chris's free content at nationalinvestor.com. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel too. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.